First of all, I just want to thank Beth Tzedec for its warm hospitality towards our USCJ board as we hold our Shabbaton here this weekend. I so appreciate Rabbi Wernick's invitation to speak today and his warm welcome, his beautiful words, as well as his friendship and his warm embrace. Thank you. As my predecessor at USCJ, Rabbi Wernick paved the way for so many of our current strengths and brought so many of our board members who are here today into leadership with the organization, and I thank you every day, Steve, for that. Many thanks also to Rabbi Freier-Bodzin for her friendship and the many ways in which she serves as a leader in our movement, and to Beth Tzedec's other clergy and staff, including a special thanks to Phil David and his team who have seen to our every need as we planned for this Shabbat. To the President, Don Smith, and the leadership of the congregation, thank you for your hospitality. And I want to recognize and wish a mazel tov to Norman Kahn, member here at Beth Tzedec and a member of our USCJ board, who has helped so much to plan our weekend, but in the end is in New Jersey celebrating the simcha of welcoming a new grandchild. Mazel tov to him, but we do miss him here. And I want to welcome and thank our board member, Madeline Sarek, who is a past president of Beth David Congregation up the road, and who has been our co-chair for this weekend and was able to stay in town and welcome us to Toronto. And to the Beth Tzedec community for your membership and leadership in USCJ and our movement. In so many ways, under Rabbi Wernick's leadership, you are showing the way to how we can renew our synagogues throughout our movement. And it's why our board wanted to spend time here in this community. I also want to wish a mazel tov to Aaron and to your family on your bar mitzvah, and thank you for sharing the bima with me today. And now, if you'll indulge me, a few words of Torah as well. I want to think back to last summer. Our family was on vacation. The drive to the entrance of the south rim of the Grand Canyon took 3 hours. And as we approached the town that comes right before the park entrance, suddenly the line of cars destined for the park came to a halt. Just moments before, a wall of water, a flash flood, had come through the town, cutting off the road. I got out of the car, walked ahead a little bit of a distance, and was amazed by the deluge that wasn't going to dissipate anytime soon. What to do? We had made reservations months before to snag a room at one of the lodges that was right by the canyon. It had been a long drive already, and we were tired and a little cranky. A friendly ranger gave us 2 choices. Wait and see if the waters would recede and they could reopen the road and we could get into the park, or travel to the only other entrance to the south rim of the canyon, 4 hours away. If you leave now, he said, you'll mostly be in daylight. So with some trepidation, off into the wilderness we went. And it turned out to be a blessing. Now, my kids are a little older. They're 24 and 27 years old, but they are still prone to "are we there yet" syndrome, which is endemic to every back seat in North America, even though they now can track our own progress on their phones. But instead, we looked for moose. We stopped at the many mini canyons that appeared on our way to the grander one. We discovered that while Arizona does not use daylight savings time, the Navajo Nation does, and we could track its borders by when the time changed on our phones, when we had reception. And we stopped to view an absolutely stunning sunset on the way. And we noted that along with its natural beauty, there was rich evidence of Native American culture, both historical and contemporary, in this beautiful part of the country. It turned out that the wilderness, the Bemidbar, that we anticipated wasn't such a wilderness after all. Or, if it was a wilderness, it was still a place of many blessings and miracles. Now, this personal experience recalls a line from the 2nd chapter of Jeremiah, and if you don't mind, I don't get to be a chazan very often, so I'm going to use a melody I always use on the high holidays, on Rosh Hashanah, in reciting this line from Jeremiah. Zacharti la chesed ne'urayich, ahavat kelulotayich, lechtech acharai bamidbar, be'eretz lo zeruah. It's a beautiful line. I accounted for to your favor the devotion of your youth, Jeremiah says to the people. Your love as a bride, how you followed me in the wilderness, the Bemidbar, in a land not sown. Now, first of all, this verse gives us an understanding of what the Tanakh means by a Midbar, a wilderness. It's a land unsown, a space without permanent habitation or a sense of cultivation. For the Tanakh, a Midbar is an in-between natural space. In Jeremiah's prophecy, the experience of our ancestors in the Midbar, the wilderness, was one of chesed, devotion and loving relationship with God. And as we begin today the book of Bemidbar, the book recounting our people's travels in the wilderness, I want to issue a spoiler alert that this is not how the Torah itself is going to portray this period in coming weeks. In fact, we'll learn about how a journey that could have taken just a few weeks or months ended up taking 40 years due to the people's lack of faith and devotion. And the traitorous report of the 10 spies who have no faith in God's protection. The people complain about the monotonous food and the lack of water. The Israelites come under the influence of the Moabites and turn away from God. And those are just a few examples of betrayal of God that we will encounter over the next few weeks, something to look forward to. Yet speaking for God, several hundred years later, Jeremiah calls this chesed ne'urayich, youthful devotion, and ahavat kelulotayich, that passionate love of a new marital relationship. Which narrative should we believe? When we see these polarities, we conservative Masorti Jews often quote a passage in the Talmud, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These and these are the words of a living God. In our movement, we can hold multiple truths at the same time. It's no surprise that the same set of events can have two narratives. In the book of the Torah, Bemidbar, that we begin reading this week, we read a cautionary tale of rebellion, dissent, and transition from an enslaved people to one preparing to be a nation dedicated to mitzvot and a relationship with God in the promised land. And in the time of Jeremiah, he's warning the people that their sins and infidelity will lead to the fall of Jerusalem and to exile, and he also offers comfort and assurance that they have shown love for God in the past, that God remains steadfast even through their infidelity and betrayal, and that God will be there for them in the future. Each narrative fits the needs of its own time. Same story, different emphasis. I don't know about you, but I wonder how the narrative of our own moment in Jewish history, our own experience in the Midbar, in the wake of October 7th, will be written. Will it be a story about failure, isolation, and struggle in the face of anti-Semitism and terrorism? Or will we write a story, as Rabbi Wernick began this morning, of resilience and pride, of acts of heroism and chesed, of unexpected allies and unanticipated strengths? Elu ve'elu. No doubt we are living both of these narratives in this moment. And the stories we tell ourselves now and what we will speak of in coming years, decades, and generations will both contain elements of truth and also speak to that moment. But right now we are still in the Midbar, in the wilderness, and it's hard to reflect on the future telling of that story. The here and now is too challenging and painful. It makes me appreciate Jeremiah's description of the Midbar as a land not sown. It's raw, a gap between civilized, secure spaces. Yet it's so interesting as we approach the holiday of Shavuot that the Torah itself was given in Midbar Sinai, in the wilderness. Not in Egypt, not in Eretz Yisrael, not in Jerusalem, in the in-between space, in the Midbar. What is it about this gift of the in-between space? Perhaps being unsown, a wild space of disorder, creates more openness for God's message, a space of vulnerability that inspires humility and spiritual exploration. And what might we consider a midbar in our own lives? Perhaps that period of aninut, that period of intense shock and mourning that follows the death of a loved one, and the space of Shiv'ah, those 7 days of comfort and reflection between tremendous loss and re-entering our normal lives. Those vulnerable moments in our life journey, like moving from college to finding a job, or from the rhythms of work to entering retirement. Perhaps those moments are also ripe for revelation, for discovering our new Torah as we move through life. And as a leader of our conservative Masorti movement, I think about how we are often called an in-between movement. Not orthodox, not reform. And in a world of extremes, I often think about how much I've come to value that in-betweenness, that midbarness. At our movement-wide convening in Baltimore last December, On Being podcast host Krista Tippett talked about how we might see that in-between space as a source of vitality, creativity, a source of life-giving. It's not just the Elu and the Elu. It's actually the Vav, the in-between, the and between those Elus. It's what I've personally always valued in my association with our movement. Maybe because I'm a middle child, or just that my personality tends towards a passionate moderation. But I'm fascinated by the idea of Elu ve'elu, a both-and approach that can hold multiple ideas and truths at once, and also an attraction to what lies in between those poles. That often seems messy, but I wonder if the Midbar is actually closer to the reality of our world than any promised land. True, it sometimes feels uncivilized, vulnerable, or uncertain. We're always tempted to ask that pre-GPS question, when will we get there? But our tradition seems to insist that that's also where we're actually most open to Torah. When the ranger told us 4 more hours, I wondered briefly if we should just return to Flagstaff, the closest town, and try again the next day. But it turned out that being in the Midbar brought blessings of beautiful scenery, family togetherness, learning, and experiences I didn't anticipate. And I tend to realize that in my own life, those moments of pain and challenge and uncertainty have often led to moments of self-discovery and spiritual growth. It's interesting that in the Jewish calendar, we always reach the book of Bemidbar before celebrating Shavuot. So on this Shabbat of being Bemidbar in the wilderness, I encourage living in the world of the in-between, the space unsown, of being in the space that holds multiple truths and the space in between those truths, a space of vulnerability and curiosity and discovery, a space that is open to revelation and to Torah. And in the coming week, may we celebrate that gift of Torah when we are so open and so blessed to receive it. Shabbat Shalom and early wishes for a Chag Sameach.